Modern civilization is losing itself within the expanding world of technological innovation. Nearly everything we touch still reverberates with the rhythmic incantations of the burgeoning global machine. Our clothes have been produced by it, all our food bears its greasy fingerprints, and our entire lives are monitored by its eyes and ears, which we carry around willingly in our pockets. We've all heard old stories about children stumbling into parallel worlds and exploring landscapes dominated by a singular sense of magic. But the new story, which we're attempting not only to write, but to enter into, is filled with all the enchantments of automation and computer science. We've rejected the warmth of the dragon's breath because it can also be dangerous. We've discarded the genie in his bottle because he can't always be controlled. And in place of these things, we've covered our world in the cold skin of metal and the predictable regularity of the assembly line. We believe in technology because we think it will give us the same charms of magic, but on our terms, all the benefits without all the uncertainties. But mankind's first encounters with technology were far different. When Adam and Eve were clothed with the skins of an animal, they knew full well that something had died so that they might live. While Noah was building the ark, he recognized that its completion would mean his family's salvation, but also trigger the annihilation of his neighbors. And when the first people discovered how to light a fire, they realized not only that it could repel the cold that threatened them, but also that it would torture them if they touched it. But in our synthetic, artificial modern world, we're attempting to retain the comfort of the fire without the nuisance of having to respect it. Thus, the most civilized man today is the one perceived to be the least subject to the laws of nature. The men we respect the most are the ones who seem to feel the constraints of respect the least. Yet in the presence of such men, the wild man laughs, for he has stared into the fire long enough to recognize that the burden of respect comes not from the flame itself, but from that which overshadows it, that is, from the shadow of truth, which casts its shadow over the whole world. So no matter how much modern man attempts to marginalize the fire in favor of more tidy alternatives, he still can't escape the shadow. No matter how far he buries himself in the artificial maze of modernity, the shadow will still be there. It bathes every element, haunts every place, and stalks every person. And just as it marks the ultimate source of the fire, it points to the ultimate source of everything else as well. We will never escape it because we are actually sustained by it. Today we comfort ourselves by pretending we understand why things are, because we've begun to understand how things work. We think we defang the roar of thunder by explaining that it's simply caused by an expansion and contraction in the air caused by the heat of lightning. We reduce the beauty of the trees in autumn to a mere seasonal chemical reaction. And we think we know why the fire burns, because we understand that it feeds off the gases released from the logs. But what we forget is that while all these explanations of what things do only answer one small part of why these things do what they do. While all fires do require certain elements to burn, the vast majority of fires are also ignited by an agent. The fire is the outcome of certain conditions, but is equally the outcome of desire. As a creation, the fire has a creator, and is therefore imbued with the meaning of its maker. It burns because someone wants it to. You might say that the wild man sees the fire in all things, ignited by the agent who overshadows all things. And he remembers the deep, old knowledge that the ancients treasured, that modern society would rather forget. He quotes the saints and says, "By him all things were created, in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities. All things were created through him and for him. And he upholds the universe by the word of his power." The someone that these old texts refer to is the person of truth itself, the one who was before all things, who created all things and sustains all things. Because the wild man is so well acquainted with raw creation, He harbors a natural reverence for the Creator. He recognizes the knowledge and power of civilized men and acknowledges the strides that societies have made to manipulate their environments. But beneath all this, and within all this, he still discerns the higher reality to which everything is connected. To the wild man, the knowledge of the sage is only a faint echo of the wisdom of God, and the power of an earthly ruler is only the corrupted reflection of the sovereignty of the King of the universe. And in every element, in every environment, the wild man sees clearly the spark of meaning that inhabits all things, a spark that rises from the source of all things and keeps glowing only because the source wants it to. Civilized men have rejected the idea of God because they claim to see no sign of him. But the wild man, who retains the memory of how the world was in the very beginning, sees God's handiwork everywhere, and therefore sees meaning everywhere. The shadow of the origin of everything still falls on everything. Therefore, in everything, the wild man sees a sign. To him, it isn't difficult to imagine a man rising from the dead, because he has repeatedly seen the grass do the same thing every springtime. Nor is it incredible that a prophet might predict the future, because he himself can predict with perfect certainty that it will be cold in January. The commonplace occurrences of our natural experience are, to the wild man, no less wondrous than a miracle. For to him, the existence of everything is a miracle, which the scientists and the intellectuals still can't fully explain. Imagine the haunting but extraordinary feeling of waking up one morning and finding everything in the world floating a few inches above the ground. Sustained by some invisible source, every building, every vehicle, and every stray cat still looks completely ordinary, except that they're now floating in midair. If we experienced such a phenomenon, we would immediately assume we were dreaming. But the wild man's eyes are still old enough and still young enough to wake up every morning with exactly this point of view. He doesn't see a cold, soulless world of aimless, unguided chance, but a world upheld by divine power, existing out of nothing, in the middle of nothing, out of thin air for a divine purpose. Thus, even in the old twig that he kicks off the path and in the pebble in his shoe, he recognizes the force of intention, of design, and of a designer. Everything was conjured with a word that sustains all things to this day and remains charged with meaning and purpose. And we, mortal men, have been given the bewildering honor of discovering and celebrating such purpose. The ministry of the wild man is to remind us of all this. Like Christ, he would wipe mud in our eyes so we might see again. Calling us out of the technological fairy tale of our own making, he admonishes us to remember the surpassing adventure of following the King of Truth into his infinite kingdom, to recognize his shadow in all things, and regain the awe, the dread, and the joy of heeding truth's divine intention. Thanks for watching, everybody. As always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the video if you liked it, and we'll see you next time on the Orthodox Universalist channel.